Welcome back, everyone. In part one, we really dug into the why, the biology of the winter bee, and why the old ways of treating just aren't cutting it anymore. Well, today we get our hands dirty. This is all about the how. We're going to build a modern action plan to tackle Varroa head on. So let's open up that toolbox and get to work. But hang on, just a real quick but super important heads up. This is part two. If you haven't seen part one yet, I'd seriously recommend pausing right here and watching that first. It covers all the critical biology of winter bees, and honestly, that's the foundation for every single strategy we're going to talk about today. It'll make everything just click. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at every tool in the beekeeper's arsenal. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of choosing your treatments and some really clever biotechnical tricks. We also have to talk about adapting to climate change because it's a game changer. And finally, we'll pull it all together into a solid year-round action plan. Okay, let's dive in. The heart of modern Varroa management is to stop looking for a single silver bullet. It just doesn't exist. Instead, you need to think of it like having an entire arsenal of tools. It's about mastering both the chemical treatments and these smart, strategic interventions to stay one step ahead of the mites. So, the first set of tools in that arsenal, well, it's treatments. But, not all treatments are treated equal. The big choice you'll have to make is between what we call conventional options and the more natural ones, and they each come with a totally different set of rules. So let's break this down. On one hand, you've got conventional treatments. Think things like amitraz or flumethrin. These are designed to work long-term, hitting mites over several brood cycles. But, and this is a huge but, the mites can develop resistance, and they can do it fast. That means you absolutely have to rotate what you're using. On the other side, you have natural options like formic and oxalic acid. Now these can be incredibly effective, but you have to play by their rules. Formic acid only works within a specific temperature range, and for oxalic acid to really pack a punch, the colony needs to be brood-free. And here's something that gets overlooked all the time. It's not just what you use, it's how you use it. Following these protocols is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to be strict with the dosing. The positioning has to be precise, right in the brood nest where the bees and mites are. And then there's this one, which is just fascinating, wax renewal. Research shows that Varroa mites are 4 to 5 times more drawn to old dark comb. So by swapping out about a 30 of frames every year, you're not just keeping things clean, you are literally removing a mite magnet from your hive. Okay, let's move on to the next set of tools in the arsenal. And I gotta say, these are my favorites because they are just so smart. These are what we call biotechnical methods, and they let us fight Varroa by outthinking them, often without a single drop of chemicals. And here are 3 really powerful examples. First up, queen caging. This is a total game changer. By isolating the queen for about 3 weeks, you create an artificial break in the brood cycle. This forces all the mites that were hiding in the capped cells out into the open, onto the adult bees. And when they're exposed like that, a single flash treatment with something like oxalic acid is just devastatingly effective. Then there's drone brood removal. This uses the mite's own biology against it. Since they prefer to reproduce in drone cells, you give them a special frame, let them lay their eggs in there, and then you just pull it out and freeze it. You can remove thousands of mites at once. And finally, you've got thermal treatment, a more high-tech option, where you carefully raise the hive temperature just enough to kill the mites but keep the bees perfectly safe. Now, just when you think you've got your strategy all figured out, a massive curveball comes along that changes the entire battlefield, our environment. Climate change isn't some abstract future problem for beekeepers. It is fundamentally altering how our colonies behave right now. And this right here explains the dangerous chain reaction perfectly. Warmer, milder winters mean the bees often don't stop laying brood. That natural brood break, that pause button that used to happen in the cold, it's disappearing. Without that break, Varroa can just keep on reproducing all year long without any interruption. This leads to this insane exponential growth that can catch even experienced beekeepers totally by surprise. So the solution is clear. We now have to be the ones to create the brood breaks that nature used to give us for free. And listen, this isn't just a theory. We have the data. A study in Germany compared bee yards at different winter temperatures, and the result they found was staggering. In the warmer locations, the colony started raising brood a full 14 days ahead of schedule. 2 weeks! So what does a 2-week head start for the mites actually mean by the end of the year? It means those same colonies ended the season with parasitic loads that were 3 times higher than the colonies in the colder spots. A tiny shift in winter temperature has this massive compounding effects by the time fall rolls around. It's incredible. So this new reality, The mite's biology, combined with a warming climate, it means our whole approach has to change. We simply can't be reactive anymore, waiting for a crisis. We need a smart, strategic, season-by-season action plan that anticipates the threat before it gets out of control. And any good plan starts with good information. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? This is your annual monitoring blueprint. It's all built around 4 critical checkpoints throughout the year. You're not just treating blindly, you're constantly taking the pulse of your hive. You check your mite load at the very beginning of the season to see what you're starting with. You check it again after the spring honey flow. You test right before your main summer treatment so you know exactly what you're up against. And finally, you check one last time after the treatment to make sure it actually worked and your winter bees are safe. Okay, so when spring rolls around, your number one priority is to get ahead of that mite growth curve. Your main tool here is that drone brood removal we talked about. If you do that 3 times, you can pull a huge number of mites out of the hive early on. Another fantastic tool is making artificial swarms. This not only mimics a natural process, but it forces a brood break in that new colony, which sets you up perfectly for super effective flash treatment. But summer is the real pivot point. This is where the battle is won or lost. Mite populations are hitting their absolute peak, so your goal has to shift entirely. Now it's all about one thing: protecting the nurse bees who are about to raise your precious winter bees. The winning strategy is to combine a biotechnical method like queen cadging with a flash treatment right after you pull your honey. What's the result? You break the mite's life cycle, you expose all the trapped mites, and you land a knockout punch with your treatment. This protects that critical winter generation. So if you take only one thing away from all of this, let it be this core philosophy. It's built on 3 pillars. First, anticipate, don't just react. Think like a chess player, not a firefighter. You're always monitoring, always thinking a few steps ahead. Second, preserve the winter bees at all costs. Every single thing you do in spring and summer is an investment in that one generation that has to survive the cold. And third, adapt. Habit is your worst enemy in a changing world. Your strategy has to be flexible enough to deal with the reality of this specific season. I know that's a lot to take in, but these principles, these tools, they can completely change the odds for your apiary. So I'll just leave you with one final question to think about as you get ready for the year ahead. Is your Varroa strategy ready for this season? Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive. I really hope you found it helpful. If you did, please be sure to subscribe for more advanced beekeeping strategies to help your colonies not just survive, but truly thrive. We'll see you next time.